Welcome to the Bill Kelly Podcast, critical discussions in critical times. Here's your host, Bill Kelly.
Hey, hi, and welcome to a special edition of the Bill Kelly Podcast. This is a special live stream, and I want to talk about what you're going to be doing over the next couple of. This is about consumer spending and about Canadians' attitude towards tariffs and the Americans. And there's a couple of things I want to reference here, and I certainly want to get your thoughts and comments on this too. And because I've seen some people recently get quite outraged about the fact that the Americans are continuing with this. We're heading into the holiday season. It's Christmas shopping season, right? Are you going to buy Canadian? And the overriding question I'm going to ask here is, are you still boycotting American goods because of the tariff deal? Many Canadians were. Is the shine wearing off on that? We're going to go to your comments in a couple of seconds. But before we do that, let me bring up a recent survey. This was done a little while ago by Nick Nanos, the Nanos research team, that gives us an indication as to where Canadians' minds and attitudes are about this. And as you can say, 4 in 5 Canadians think that boycotting U.S.-made goods or avoiding travel in response to the U.S. tariffs on Canadian goods is helpful or somewhat helpful in strengthening Canada's bargaining position with the U.S. 4 out of 5, which is rather strong given the fact that it's been a few months now, and we're getting into shopping season and things like that. You wonder if the interest is waning. I think it's getting pretty strong, if not stronger, over the last little while. Now, that's from the Nanos survey. There was another survey that I read earlier today, also from Nanos, that said that about 4 out of 5 Canadians are going to be altering their Christmas shopping because of the tariffs. In other words, avoiding American goods. So that tells me that we're still with this. We still think this is the way to go here. And we've been through a lot, and there's been a lot of pushback on this, that some of the American governors and senators have come over here and say, please come back, please spend your money. Tell your president to back off, right? A. Persalem is already jumping in already. Great to have this response already on our live cast. Says, yep, still boycotting. Danielle Oliver is saying, yes, still boycotting. Carmen Harper says, I think it's better for our economy for me to continue. Still boycotting, according to Joanne. I wish Metro and No Frills and Walmart sold grapes from other countries because I miss my grapes. So do I. I stopped buying grapes for that very reason. They make grapes in Chile. They make grapes in Argentina. Argentina may not be in Donald Trump's good books, but they're in mine. I'm not buying U.S. grapes, and that pisses me off. I agree with you totally, Diane, or Joanne, rather, about your thoughts on this. And I know a lot of people that are getting quite adamant about this and quite upset about it because it bothers me when I see some of those stores not following. John says Amazon is losing out on about $2,000 in Christmas. I'm noticing a lot of people are just saying, yeah, we're not doing that anymore. About this. And then Raiders fan, you've been having a rough year if you're a Raiders fan, says, I've been looking at Canadian-made goods since the U.S. made me get a passport in 2008. Yeah, that's getting a little crazy, isn't it? With the way they're basically putting up walls and barriers to Canadians. I thought we were friends, quite aside from the business idea of putting tariffs, which I think is still an idiotic idea. Trump just doesn't like people. I mean, he doesn't like Canadians, obviously. Amazon losing out, we mentioned that one. David from Toronto says, same here, I love my grapes. I don't love my American grapes, though, right, David? I think we're on the same page about that. And we're starting to do that with other products. And here in Ontario, we've seen that happen an awful lot with Premier Doug Ford, of course, taking all the American liquor, beer, spirits, and wine off the shelves at the LCBO, the Liquor Control Board. And there's another chapter to that I'm going to get to in just a couple of seconds. And let's do that now. Let's bring that up because the controversy over the last couple of weeks has to do with Crown Royal, an iconic Canadian whiskey, right? And Diageo, which of course is the parent company, announced a while ago that it's going to close the Crown Royal bottling plant in Amherstburg. That's just outside of Windsor. The workers have reached a final deal. They're going to get their payoffs, etc. Because Diageo says, we're not changing our minds. We're shutting the plant down. We're still Canadian. We still mash it in here. It doesn't matter. They're causing Canadian jobs. And now there's a boycott. This is another one. I just saw this on Reddit. These are Crown Royal bus shelter ads. Now, we're seeing those in the Hamilton area. I'm told that they're all over Ontario right now. I have not seen Crown Royal advertised to this extent in the past. So clearly somebody said, look, we better ramp it up here. It's kind of a goodwill gesture to say, hey, we're still Canadian. I don't know that people are buying it. Aged and distilled in Canada since 1939. Let me show you, just before we get to some of the other comments here. This is a counter advertisement that I saw just yesterday. This is a billboard in Ancaster, right beside Hamilton, and it's 40 Creek, which is a great whiskey, by the way. It started off in the Niagara Peninsula a few years ago. And here's their sign. It says, "We're not royal, but we are loyal." Now, that's a direct smack in the face to Crown Royal. I think it was genius. Whoever in the 40 Creek Advertising Agency, whoever came up with this idea, thumbs up. What a great idea. It really kind of nails it. We're not royal, obviously a shot at Crown Royal, but we are loyal. In other words, we're Canadian. We're staying right here where we are. And I think that's the feeling a lot of Canadians have these days. What a great idea. Sassy Senior says, still boycotting here in Nova Scotia. I wish most grocery stores were with us. It makes buying some items no longer as options. And that's difficult. I mean, we've had to make tough choices like that about things that we might have purchased in the past and we're just not going to because they're American. But I think, we're trying. We're trying to be adamant about this, and we're looking for, I think, some support from some of the grocery stores themselves. Sean Worthington says, still boycotting. Rarely is it much of an inconvenience. While I ate fairly healthy before all this, I'm eating healthier now. But, you can't, you've got to even check that. Even go to get produce, lettuce and celery and things like that, product of America. I don't buy it. We don't buy it in our household. That's it. Susan jumps in. You like that ad too, the 40 Creek from now on. And I think Canadians are looking for that now because of the Crown Royal situation. Yeah, maybe they're still making the product here, but if they're going to cost Canadian jobs, they see they're missing the point, just like Trump misses the point. Just like a lot of those U.S. governors missed the point. Why don't you come back? Why didn't you spend your tourism dollars here? Because your president's trying to kill our economy. That's it. Can you not get the rationale here? Sandra Rabu says, still boycotting food, travel, and gifts. Grapes come from South Africa, China, India, Egypt, Peru, Chile, Brazil, etc. Not just the United States. But these grocery stores, I see it in our Metro store, see it in our Loblaw store in our neighborhood. Get those American things off the shelves. What the hell is the matter with you people? What part of this boycott don't you guys understand? Grace's Beach Life says, still looking at the labels on where it's made from. And that's tricky, isn't it, Grace? Because sometimes you'll see that product of Canada label, on the shelf, and then you go and look at the package itself, and it says product of USA. Now, I don't know if they're directly and intently trying to change our minds or if they're really trying to fool us here, but you got to really check. You can't just go by the signs here. Bruce Bannerman says, I only buy American goods when that is the only option. And sometimes there are no options. I understand that. If it's a product that you absolutely positively have to have, I guess we don't have a whole lot of choice there, too. Kyle says, still looking at labels and using the apps, mostly barcode scanners. And that's a good idea, too. And, it takes homework. But, we were told, like, from the longest time when we all became adults, you go to the grocery store, you should be a discerning shopper, check the calorie, check the fan content, and, well, now check where it's coming from. I mean, that's all part of the deal now, isn't it? Carmen says, my family is having an all-Canadian Christmas. I think a lot of us are striving to do that, aren't we, Carmen? To simply say, look, we're not going to let up here. Yeah, the temptation might be to simply say, well, we'll let our guard down just a little bit. But that's weakening our stance, I think. If only American option, I do without. And there is, I think, one of the things that we really have to be adamant about. Joanne says, why can't the government make it easier for us to know the Canadian products? Why can't the grocery stores tell us what the Canadian products are? These guys do the mass purchasing. And I don't blame the clerks, by the way. I know that a lot of us, and that we've talked to, they go and you talk to the produce clerk or the guy who's stocking peanut butter or something, say, what are you doing that for? It's not their decision. They simply say, stock the shelves. There's no peanut butter there. You got to get the peanut butter that was ordered and put it on the shelves. That's all there is to it. But somebody has to have some responsibility for putting that stuff out there and not putting the Canadian product out there, too. And that's where I think the responsibility lies. Truthwin says, I will continue to boycott, and I look at labels carefully, and I will not buy vegetables. No more Bix for me. Yeah, the pickle thing was a big item a few years ago, remember? And as were the tomatoes and the ketchup. That started long before the tariffs did. They start moving businesses outside of Canada back to the U.S., and they try to keep the same label and say, well, we're still using Canadian produce. Well, are you really? If you're manufacturing it someplace else, I don't know. Hey, River Dog, thanks for being with us today. Still boycotting U.S. products, doing some renovations, and refuse to buy anything made in the USA. It can be tricky, but it's the principle. As a matter of fact, River Dog, check out our latest podcast. We just dropped it earlier today. A number of American institutions, including the Home Builders Association, the guys that build homes, are pleading with the president right now to drop the tariffs on softwood lumber because they say it's the best lumber. We want to build lots of quality homes. We need Canadian lumber. And those are the Americans telling Trump that. So we're on the right side of this issue. And thank you so much for the comments, because that's, I think, what we have to do is just be adamant. Hey, Justin, good to have you with us, too. Says, my loves your show and got me watching, and it's great. Well, keep doing it, Justin. Thank you so much for your comments, and thanks for being with us here tonight. Daryl says, I don't always buy Canadian, but I don't mind the products from other allies. And that's also, yeah, I'm okay with that, too. You know, if it says Mexico, okay, I can live with that. You know, that's not American, first of all, and we do have a trade relationship with Mexico, and you know what? They've been honest with us, just like we've been honest with them. It's the guys in the middle that we've got a problem with, right? That's what it comes down to. Richard Bonner says, yep, would not give them the time of day. Come on, Sweden, give me some Da Gripen. What a deal. Yeah, man, maybe we're going to buy our fighter jets from those guys. And well, we already get our IKEA furniture from them, don't we? So, you know, there are relationships there that the Prime Minister has always said we need to enhance those and we need to build on those. And I think we're still on board with whether it's whiskey or whatever else we're talking about here. Where are we going here? Jaycon. Hi, Jaycon. Thanks for being with us. I wouldn't buy U.S. greens anyhow due to E. coli. Grow my own inside. Yeah, we don't always have that option, but they're right. And there's an interesting point about that. Whether we're talking about dairy products, because there are still some U.S. dairy products that come across through trade, well, meat, produce, whatever it is, they have different standards, okay? And that's something we need to be cognizant of. Different kinds of inspections, and in some cases, there are no inspections because of some of the cutbacks the Trump administration has made. Be careful what you buy with the U.S. label, because the food quality may not be as good as you want it to be. David says, I'm okay with other allies. They support us, and we support them. Absolutely. Absolutely. I have no problem at all with that. As I say, I in the springtime, I love grapes. I love the green grapes, you know, the seedless ones. You know, they were from Venezuela, I think, initially, and Chile. That's good. I bought tons of them. As soon as they dropped those, and I don't know why they dropped them, lots of other places in South America that make grapes, that grow grapes, all of a sudden they want U.S. produce. And I'm not buying it. And I think a lot of Canadians feel the same way about it. So, yeah, we got to be strong about this. We're going, hey, Daryl, apparently we are shipping more aluminum to the EU and less to the USA, 100% behind that. By the way, that's another company. The steel and aluminum industry, the steel industry, and the building industry down in the States also have written letters to Donald Trump and saying, drop the tariffs. We need Canadian steel. We need Canadian aluminum. These are the people that use it. These are the American companies that are now pleading with the Trump administration to drop the tariffs because it's hurting their business. See, we got to stick with this. And that's why it's so important that we stay with the boycott and be strong and make the point that you know, this is where we are. This is what we're all about. Every other administration has always respected Canada and the contribution we make. I don't know why this guy won't. Kiloquanta says, would love it if the autos could fully decouple from the U.S. Greater competition would be lovely. Maybe relief from Southern Ontario for the big three. They've not helped our people in Ontario manufacturing. Yeah, we're getting mixed messages. I mean, the auto industry wants the auto pack to be, the old auto pack, of course, to come into play again. They want the tariffs dropped on car parts and everything else because it's really screwing up their industry. And the problem is sales are down for those big three now. And you know what happens when there's a void, somebody else fills in. In other words, the Japanese automakers, the Chinese automakers are trying to get a foothold into North America. And you know what? And when that happens and U.S. sales go down, they've only got themselves to blame. Well, they've got their president to blame, really. That's what it comes down to. Where are we going here? Jeff Tipping says, hey, yeah, I'm still boycotting the U.S. Good to know. Where else are we going here? Kiloquan said we did that about the autos already. Winter is very tricky, according to Anna, and it's very difficult to try to get some products here because of that. And I guess we have to be patient, don't we? The boycott completely, especially since I shop monthly, just can't bring myself to go since we shrug off the threats. But the fact that you're trying, I guess, is the important part here. Because I know some people are just giving up and saying, "Ah, to hell with it. It's not making any difference. He's not going to let the tariffs go." That's not the point. It's that we have to stand strong. And keep in mind, the other element to this, it's not just, okay, we want to, poke Donald Trump. It helps Canadian businesses. It helps Canadian farmers. It helps Canadian manufacturers if we buy Canadian. And I know we've always said, yeah, we should do that and support the locals. Don't go across the border shopping, stay here. Those are all small businesses. That's all important stuff. And that's the side of this I think that we really have to concentrate on. Tony says, I canceled Amazon in January and my credit card is down $5,000. Boy, you were an active shopper, weren't you? There can be a net benefit to that, can't? According to the Military Magazine channel today, the ones evaluating the F-35 and Gripen comparison have skewed the reports to favor the F-35. They're bought and paid for by the U.S. Yeah, just like the former Canadian general that said you got to buy the F-35s. Yes, he flew for Canadian Air Force, and God bless him for his service, but he's been a consultant for the Americans ever since then. So, of course, he's going to be biased. So watch what you read and don't just take it at face value. And, of course, the Prime Minister knows all this, and hopefully he's going to make the right decision for Canadians, too. Where are we going here? Buy Canadian-built cars. JCon says absolutely do that. And it can be difficult. But I know somebody that was in the market. They prefer the higher-end cars. Said, nope, no Cadillacs, nope, because most of those things, if not all of them, especially when it comes to some of the GM and Fords, are all being manufactured south of the border. Not all of them, but a lot of them are now. And if it's manufactured down there, we're not buying it. That's what a lot of people are saying up here, and good for you. It's difficult. Maybe you have to give up something that, hey, I really like such and such a brand of car, or the SUV, whatever the case might be, but just don't do it until we get some relief here and we get some respect from the U.S. administration. And that's really what it comes down to. Writers Fan says, I live in Windsor, and Leamington has a lot of greenhouses. They grow a lot of local produce. Absolutely. And those are Canadian produce goods that we can use here. But the difference here, and the thing that I just mentioned a couple of minutes ago that I think is so important, is the grocery stores have to be on side. They're the ones that order the stuff. Unless you want to drive down to Leamington every week to get your produce, and we can't do that. The grocery stores have got to step up here. And I know that, they've had a bad rap, and I think a lot of it's justified over the last couple of years. So, fixing prices and, the bread fiasco and everything else. It's time for you guys to step up. Now, if you're truly Canadian, whether you're Metro, whether you're, Loblaws, whatever the case might be, hey, Weston family, start waving the Canadian flag. How about that, okay? And make sure that all of your affiliate stores are on side with this. I don't hear the Westons talking about that. This is a chance for them to really, I think, score some good publicity and saying, yeah, we're with you guys. In the absence of that, silence is compliance as far as I'm concerned. And I can tell that by the number of Americans' goods that they're still stocking all the time in all their stores, whether it's produce or groceries or anything else. Robert says, still boycotting everything in American. Good for you. Chris says, I choose to support my fellow Canadians and doing that by buying Canadian only. So here's the story that we were just talking about. Canada's Boycott America movement is hurting innocent bystanders. No, I get that, okay? And I'm not going to be trite here and say, well, there's collateral damage in situations like this. But the problem here is that, yes, people are going to be injured by this. Virginia Distillery, Gareth Moore, he's the CEO there, was bullish on the company's American single malt whiskey sales north of the border when they kicked off 2025. But then the demand crashed as the centuries-long friendship between the United States and Canada broke down and bruised feelings over tariffs, Donald Trump's threat to make Canada the 51st state. So he goes on to say, we were looking to triple the business. Instead, it's collapsed to zero. Moore told CNN in a phone interview, it was almost like suddenly the whiskey didn't taste good because of where it's from. That's not the point. Okay. And again, Mr. Moore and everybody else that's complaining about the Canadian boycotts on whiskey, wine, whatever the case might be, talk to your president then. None of this was happening. We had a deal. We had a free trade deal. And we had a great flow of goods back and forth, and it was you were winning, we were winning. It was great until Trump steps in all of a sudden with this idiotic tariff thing and just arbitrarily imposing tariffs for whatever reason, and it's hurting Canadian business. You're losing business? How about I read the long list of Canadian businesses that have been hit by this? Algoma Steel, a major steelmaker in Ontario, in the province of Ontario, Mr. Distiller, just had to lay off 1,000 people again today. Today, 1,000 people this close to Christmas saying, sorry, guys, no paychecks, no jobs. And that's because of these idiotic tariffs from Donald Trump. So don't cry me a river that you're not selling your booze up here, okay? You can sell that as soon as you get president. You either get rid of him or get rid of the tariffs, one or the other. It's that simple. And I heard Howard Lutnick, who's one of Trump's acolytes, the other day saying, I don't know why Canadians are doing this. They're really hurting our distillers and our winemakers because your boss is killing our economy. He is purposely killing our economy. Do you think we're going to stand by and let that happen? Do you think we're simply going to say, yeah, oh, sure, I didn't mean to offend you, Mr. Trump, but, yeah, please put the tariffs on. It's only fair. No, it's not fair. The whole idea of trade deals, and this is going on all over the world, and it's one of the reasons why we had a trade deal, why we had a free trade deal with the United States, and the Kuzma deal, which is still in place now, at least for another year anyway, was because it's mutually beneficial. And one of the purposes of trade deals is to eliminate tariffs so that you and me as customers and the people that manufacture these goods, the people that transport these goods, don't have additional costs because they just pass those on to us, right? Right, Daryl? He writes in now, says, why do we import steel when we make it ourselves? Good question. Something the Prime Minister Carney asked the steel industry when all this stuff started a couple of months ago. And it's something that we have to get our heads around. You're absolutely right. And I know that he's now has a Buy Canadian policy with government projects. You're going to rebuild the port in Churchill, Manitoba. You're going to build the port in Montreal. You're going to start building big, tall, strong buildings, etc. Use Canadian steel. You're going to build a pipeline. Use Canadian steel, because they haven't always done that. And the Americans who are in that industry, who are building pipelines and building tall buildings, they want Canadian steel. They want Canadian aluminum because they say it's higher quality. And if you're going to build something that you want to last, you want the best quality. Well, that's Canada. You want lumber? Softwood lumber from Canada is the best quality product, better than the American. Sorry, Mr. Trump, but that's the reality. The industry knows it, and they're hurting because of his tariffs. John says Trump is trying to weaken our economy in the hopes Canada breaks and begs to be the 51st state. Well, as our Prime Minister said, not going to happen. Okay? Not going to happen. I was going to say don't hold your breath, but maybe, Mr. Trump, hold your breath, okay, until it happens, because it's not going to happen. And that's the message we have to get across. And many American politicians and many people in American business, they get it. The job now is up to you. You go and convince your president to back off. That's really what it comes down to. Thomas says, thanks, everyone, for coming to the live chat. And thank you for it, too, because this is, I think, an opportunity that we rarely get here, is to simply have a platform and say, hey, what's going on? What's on your mind? What do you think about this idea? You talk about it around the kitchen table, and hey, how's this going? What are the neighbors doing? And I love the opportunity for us to simply open this up and let you talk about what you're doing, okay? Blue State says, we don't have to bankroll our competition. Let me roll that one back again. And that's really what it comes down to, I think, that the issue with Canadian steel use in Canada is we have neglected investing in its innovation. By that, I mean industry. And I know that, and that's part of the problem. And part of the reason for that, by the way, is some of the steel makers, and more particularly here in Hamilton, where U.S. Steel owns Stelco for a number of years, they don't put money into it. You understand? They're not looking at futures. It's just trying to suck the industry dry. And thank God it's back to Canadian ownership now. And I get that. It's not necessarily complacency. It's who's going to be the owner, and do they have that vision, and do they have that patriotic attitude towards helping. Daryl says, I live in Alberta, so this chat is very encouraging for me. And so is the word out of Alberta, by the way, Daryl, about the talk about separation and all this, about sovereignty and blah, 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 blah from Danielle Smith. The surveys we've seen out of there overwhelmingly say, no, Alberta wants to stay. They want a great deal for their province, just like Ontario wants a great deal for their province, etc. But, we're stronger together, as Prime Minister Carney says. And I think the overwhelming majority of Albertans feel the same way as you do, Daryl. And that's really encouraging, I think. Randy says, I continue my boycott, but I cave for the Vidalia onions. Okay. Well, everybody's got their weaknesses, I guess. Try to find a Canadian alternative or a Peruvian alternative. There's got to be something. And again, I go back to the grocery stores themselves. A user says, I'm still waiting for your average American to get why Canada is boycotting U.S. goods and travel, and it's not because of the exchange rate. It's about Canadian sovereignty and 51st state threats. Absolutely. And, it's not as if we haven't told them that. It's clear as day. They just, what? They're hearing us. They're not listening to us. And there's a difference. And of course, part of it is because everything gets filtered through the crazy man in the White House, and they just listen to him. I mean, this guy, whatever he says, millions and millions of Americans simply buy whatever he says. They know it's lies, but they buy it anyway because it's him. Blue State Champion says, American here. No way Canada adds 60,000 jobs plus 2 months in a row if the boycott buys and isn't working, especially in the face of Trump's tariffs. This is the problem here, okay? And I know that we saw some, I think, encouraging news about our economy, and our economy is actually on the upswing right now, despite the fact that all the experts were saying we were going to tank and go into a recession. And no, it's just the opposite. It's growth. It's not magnificent. It's not huge, but it's growth, and that's a good idea. But that's because of what we're doing. The boycotts are hurting us. You know, when say Algoma Steel has to lay 1,000 people off today, other companies are laying people off or canceling shifts. That's because of the tariffs. That's hurting us. But you and me and Canadians all over this country are picking up the slack as best we can anyway and saying, to hell with you, we're going to buy Canadian products. We're going to do what we can to stimulate the Canadian economy. We're going to make sure that if I'm going to buy Canadian clothing, Canadian products, Canadian food, that those are helping Canadian jobs. Those are helping people maintain their jobs. Steel is not something we can have a direct impact on, but the industry itself can, and the government can, and so can other businesses around here. That stop ordering the U.S. steel and start using the Canadian product. That's really what this comes down to. And yeah, it can be difficult sometimes, and it might be changing a policy that's been in place for years, and if not generations. Change it. That's what we're doing as consumers. You can do it too. Robert says Canada trades with other countries and people don't hate our country. No, they understand that because trade is give and take, right? And it's mutually beneficial. That's why the Prime Minister has been talking about doing things like trading deals with the European Union, with Scandinavian countries, excuse me, and going on around the world. I got my water here. For those of you that watch the podcast, you know that I had a wicked cold a couple of days ago. I'm over the most of it, but every now and then we get a dry throat, and I've got my SodaStream water here to keep me going for the next little while because I'm getting worked up here. Canadians are supposed to be kind of laid back, and no, we're not anymore. It's time for us to just stand up and say, hell, we're not taking this crap from you anymore. Kate says Stellantis is hiring back 1,400 for a third shift in Windsor. Good news. Good to hear that. Mind you, the concern here is, of course, is what they're doing in Brampton. Good for Windsor. That's a great opportunity for the people down there. But they had made a huge commitment to Brampton, and they've just simply backed out of it. And that's really hurtful to the Brampton economy. I know Mayor Brown and others are pretty pissed off about that. And we'll see how the government, we break a contract, there's supposed to be repercussions. So, I think our Canadian government is looking at that and just finding out exactly what kind of penalties are going to be in place for that. Let me see here. Robert says, can't find a Canadian baking soda. There's got to be one someplace. And again, why can't they stock it? I can't believe that nobody makes that sort of thing. And why don't the markets actually start looking for it? Yes, it would take extra effort, but isn't it worth it? I mean, if the grocery stores are all on side with us, make the extra effort and make sure you get the Canadian product or anything other than American when it comes to things like produce. And that's really what it comes down to. We're being discerning shoppers. We're reading labels. We're saying, no, not that. I'm not getting something that's made in Kentucky. I want to get something that's made in Ontario or British Columbia. Why can't the grocery stores do that when they stock their shelves? Robin says, this is the first time in my memory that citizens have had a direct line on our economy. Boycotts do work. Sure they do. And we've seen that happen in the past. And you know what was interesting about this? I've talked about this on the podcast. During the first Trump administration, that nightmare, we did exactly what we're doing now. And it worked because they dropped the tariffs, or at least dropped them significantly anyway. Because back then, Trump and his minions listened to the senators and to the business people that said, stop this, you're hurting us too. He's not listening anymore. I don't think Donald Trump gives a damn about I know he doesn't give a damn about the Canadian economy. I don't think he cares about the American economy. Everything that this guy has done since he came back into the White House almost a year ago now has been to line his own pockets. That's all he cares about. He doesn't care if Midwestern farmers are going dry and giving up their farms. He doesn't care if the auto industry is hurting. He doesn't give a damn about that. He doesn't care if millions of people lose their health care. He just doesn't care. He likes it, though, when he and his billionaire buddies can line their pockets with Bitcoin or whatever. Trip over to Saudi Arabia a couple of weeks ago. He's holding hands with the guy who killed Khashoggi. He's his best buddy now. That was all about making a deal for Trump. That was all about making a deal for the Trump family so they could invest there. And the same thing with this so-called peace deal that he's trying to work here with Ukraine is not unlike the one that he tried to work with Gaza. And part of those deals, part of the Trump solution, and I'll use that term loosely, has always been that the U.S. will actually work during the rebuilding of these areas. Well, that's so he can make more money. It's all about money for Trump. He doesn't give a damn. And Americans had better wake up to that, because he's not looking after their best interests. And because of that, they're hurting. And because they're hurting, we're hurting. And it's all because of that guy in the White House. It really comes down to them. That's ground zero. Where else are we going here? Yehweh says, in 2018, the same crap happened. So many people forget or never knew that we were called a national security threat to screw up the free trade agreement. No damages were awarded. Yeah, and that's another one of the phrases, isn't it, that he throws around? Oh, it's a national security threat. No, it's not. Trump is the national security threat, not the Canadian economy. He's the one that's breaking all the rules, and he's the one that's imposing these tariffs, and he's the one that's causing all the grief here. That's really what it comes down to. And I, like you, am sitting here every day wondering, when are these American people going to wake up? They're smart people, they're intelligent people, they're innovative people, yet they've fallen prey to this crazy guy in the White House. Where else are we going here? Doing and Campanine says, Seven Dory, I went without celery half this year. They were only U.S. on the shelf. Yeah, we did that too. If it's not Canadian, we're not buying it. That's all there is to it. And again, it's hurtful, but we have to be true to I think, the cause here as to what we're doing. Spider says Trump is president for his personal status, wealth, staying out of jail, and paying his legal bills and judgments. Absolutely. Malcolm says, I haven't bought any fighter jets yet in the last year. Well, and I bet you were tempted, weren't you? But the fact of the matter is we've had governments in the past, whether it's municipal, federal, provincial, here in this country, encouraging us to always buy Canadian. And it frustrates me, and I'm sure it frustrates you too, when all of a sudden we see that, well, the governments themselves aren't even following that policy. Well, according to the Prime Minister Carney, that's changing. And the federal government is changing. Hopefully the provincial governments are doing the same sort of thing now. We got to look after ourselves here. Robin says Trump's motive is revenge. He's all about revenge and what he can do to destroy America. Yeah, I mentioned this on the podcast earlier today, the one that we dropped just a couple of hours ago. How much of an influence does Putin have over Trump? Significant. We know that. There was nothing Vladimir Putin would love more than to see the U.S. economy crash. And Trump's going to have a safe landing no matter what, because he's Putin's boy in Washington. So, if the whole U.S. economy craters and falls apart, Trump just hops on a plane to Moscow. He's probably already got a place already lined up for him there. Dory says, I'm so proud of PM Carney and the hard work that he is doing. I think a lot of Canadians are getting a lot more respect for the Prime Minister when they see just how he is handling the issues. And more importantly, how the world is viewing Canada now as a leader in this direction, and viewing Mark Carney as one of the strong voices. For generations, really, for probably 100 years now, at least, if not more, the Americans have been the powerful voice, right? The strongest in NATO, the strongest in the G7. They were the big dog. Trump doesn't want to play that card anymore. As a matter of fact, he's more associated with Putin than he is with the G7 and with democratic societies. Somebody's got to pick up that slack. And Mark Carney apparently is ready to pick up that mantle. I mean, look, with Macron and others, there's going to be others involved. Of course, there has to be. But I'm proud to see our Prime Minister stepping up and not only doing what he thinks is the right thing, but gaining the respect of other world leaders for doing that. That's a very important aspect of this. Blue State Champion says it all makes sense when you realize that Trump is really just a Russian asset. And that's something that I've seen so many different times on social media. I just wish the people in Congress and in the Senate would understand that too. Where are we going here? Robert says, I think I'm going to have a look at this. Bill says, I would be great to have a lot more fun with multi-floor farms, for commercial sale. Lower transportation costs to the stores, and the food would be fresher. And Bill, it's a good point. You know what it is? It's all about us reimagining how we do business and changing. And if we become too reliant on the United States, for instance, for too many of these products, how can we change that? And by the way, the other element to this too, and again, if I can put some sense of urgency to the Americans that have been praying and bugging us to get back and spend our Canadian dollars, in vacation spots or going across the border for weekend shopping trips, whatever the case might be, we're not doing that. But here's the thing. Even if Trump were to stop, or even if Trump were to lose or get booted out of office in another 3 years, the Canadians already changed their attitude toward the Americans. It's going to take a lot of convincing for us to trust Americans again, at least on the political level. And I'm still friends. I still have relatives. I still have friends, that live and work in America. Great people. It's not them we're talking about. It's the people that make the decisions. It's the power brokers. The United States has changed from the beacon of democracy in the world right now to basically it's a situation right now where all they care about are the billionaires, and the billionaires run the government. The billionaires make all the decisions. And it's frightful to see what's going on. It's not unlike with Putin, and he's got the oligarchs there that are simply there to support him because they make a lot of money. Well, the oligarchs in the United States are Jeff Bezos, they're Zuckerberg, they're Elon Musk. They're the oligarchs here that are supporting Trump because he's making even more money for them. I mean, how much money do you need? But these guys are stinking filthy rich already. But when you've got more, you want more, you want more. And they don't give a damn about the American people either. Spider says all levels of government in Canada should stop using Microsoft, Apple, Amazon Web Services, Oracle, etc. That's a discussion that I guess needs to be had and talk about different options and where we can go. It's a matter of changing mindsets, I guess, and seeing just where the other options are. And it's not going to be easy, but I think it's something that we do have to try to do. Susan says, I went to Metro to buy sweet potato and told them no, they're from the USA. And again, I feel a twinge of sadness rather, because I don't like to lay this all on the store clerk, the guy or the woman who's stocking the shelves there, because they don't order the stuff. And they're kind of between a rock and a hard place. Went to the independent store there, Canada sweet potatoes. You see, they do have them. It's a matter of, well, are you going to order them? Are you going to put those on the shelves? Well, Loblaws, well, Metro, well, Sobeys, what are you going to do about this? Because you're the one that's dropping the ball right now. Randy is, I think, agreeing with me here. He says, you're right, Bill, because of the way Canadians choose on their own to boycott. This is a generational thing. Cardi is reading the room exactly right. And he is. The guy's a pretty insightful guy. He sees big picture. He sees what's going on. And he realizes, rightly so, that you're not going to get anything, not from Donald Trump or anybody else, by sitting there and pounding on the desk and yelling and screaming. That it takes thoughtful, strategic approaches to this, which is what he's doing. And as long as this pushback that's starting to happen in the States now from American corporations, that maybe these tariffs are really injuring them too, we're going to have allies. I mean, all of a sudden, these people that were the ones that were benefiting, or they thought they were benefiting from these tariffs, are really starting to realize now that my business is caving, and they're the ones that are going to put pressure on Trump. Mark Carney is probably not going to get Donald Trump to drop tariffs. And neither is Macron in France. Neither is anybody else. It's the rich people. It's the money that talks. That's all Trump listens to. And when the money, and it's not just Bezos and Zuckerberg, there's a lot of other millionaires and billionaires that are going to be impacted by this. As soon as they start saying, okay, we got to change tactics here, he'll listen, because money talks to Donald Trump. And in the meantime, we have to stay strong, because as long as we put the pressure on those manufacturers and on those construction workers and those people that are needing Canadian products to do their business and to build what they want to build, as long as we put that pressure on them, then they're going to continue to put pressure on the president. As Susan says, we have to stick together for this to work. And look here, it's going great. Well, it's going better than we thought. To see an uptick in our economy as we did just a couple of weeks ago. And I know, there's a handful of economists that all got, on the evening news that night. Well, yeah, but it's not as much as we really should, and there's still a lot of problems. Of course there are problems. Cut the doom and gloom. We had an uptick because Canadians are fighting back. That's a good news story. And the Canadian media here just doesn't seem, they seem, they reject good news stories. It's like they're allergic to good news. We see an uptick in the economy. Yeah, well, it's not as strong as it should be, and there's still a lot of weaknesses. We should have been tanking. That's what you told us a couple of months ago. We're not. So, back off just a little bit and look at what Canadians are doing. And if it's not going to come from the Americans, it's going to come from us. And the Prime Minister understands that too. And he's obviously been a big supporter, and he's not just talking the talk, he's walking the walk. American products, sorry, we're going to buy Canadian. We're going to build with Canadian steel. We're going to build with Canadian aluminum. We're going to use Canadian softwood lumber, and on and on and on it goes. And that's the sort of attitude that we have not had in this country for the longest time, and we've changed. And I think that's gratifying. Thanks to everybody. I got a couple more comments here I just want to run into. Canada Post to replace Amazon. Canada Post is got some issues of their own. I don't know if that's necessarily going to be the answer to it, but it's an option. You're absolutely right. Quick from David here says, Trump is a symptom. U.S. citizens allowed the Overton window to move as far as it did. Canadians have to ensure that it doesn't happen here. And we've talked about that many times, and I'm going to end on that note because I think that's so important, John. Thank you for that note. What happened there could happen here because there are Trump supporters, there are Maple MAGA people. Poilievre is one of them. Let's cut right to the quick here. And a lot of his acolytes and sycophants, they would love to see Trumpism and MAGA happening here in this country. And we can't allow that to happen. And if you think, oh, no, it'll be better here, give yourself a shake. Come on. It's ruining the U.S. economy. It's ruining the U.S. population. It's ruining a once great nation. You read publications or listen to broadcasts from outside of North America. And we have that possibility now. We have that capability. We have access to that now because of the internet. And whether it's BBC, whether it's reading The Economist, whether it's other papers and other news sources from other parts of the world, they are all talking about the decay of the American empire. It's happening. It's not something that might happen. It's happening right before our eyes. And it's sad and it's tragic. And I don't know if they can stop it in time. That's a decision they're all going to have to make. But we're not, as sure as hell, not going to let the same thing happen in this country. And we've got to be adamant about that. And yes, we want that kind of leadership from our leaders, and we're getting it now, thankfully, from Prime Minister Carney and his team. But it's up to each and every one of us, too, okay? Brandy says, thanks, Bill. Appreciate you. Back at you. We appreciate everything that you guys are doing, too. I love doing these live streams because it really gives us this back and forth here. It's kind of reminding me of the old days of when I was doing talk radio. Just open the lines up and see what people are thinking. And we got from Brandy and Joe and everybody else calling in. And there's I think a real energy that's created there when we can have that direct dialogue. And we want to do this, and we are going to be doing this a lot more often because I get energized from it, and I hope you do too. And I think we also, in doing this, we're sending a strong message to our political leaders that, yeah, we're following you. We got your back. We're behind you on this because this is all about Canada. And yeah, maybe I do without celery for a couple of weeks, or maybe I'm not going to buy that Cadillac because it's made down in Kentucky as opposed to in Ontario. That's big deal. We'll get by. That's what we do. You have to learn to pivot, and we're doing all of that. Thank you to all of you for taking part. Thank you, Dave, for your $5 tip. I appreciate that. That'll buy my coffee tomorrow morning. And again, keep in touch and let us know about your thoughts. And if you've got some ideas about what we should do on some of these live streams, pop us a note and let us know, okay? That's it for this special edition of the Bill Kelly Podcast. And as always, we thank you. Thank you for your subscriptions to your support through subscriptions helps us to do this kind of work and get the research done and bring these stories to you and give you that platform to be able to talk about this. It's been a great session for us this time. I hope you enjoyed it as much as we did, too. Thanks to Madeline Kelly for the production. And until next time, I'm Bill Kelly. Stay in touch and stay informed.
Bill Kelly Podcast brought to you by Wizen's Law, personal injury lawyers. Listen, you didn't choose to get injured, but you can choose the right lawyer. Wizen's Law, 905-522-1102 or wizenslaw.com.